Hey, welcome back. Welcome to the Aurebesh Chronicles, the show where we're going to deep dive into the captivating worlds of Star Wars comic books. My name is David from Aurebesh Files, your guide through the pages of these incredible books, and together we're going to explore how they further the Star Wars stories we all know and love. Today we're talking about the comic book series Star Wars Yoda. This is a 10-book series featuring our favorite little green guy, Yoda. Not Baby Yoda, but the original Yoda. And all the lessons that he learned leading up to his visitor, Luke, that we see in Empire Strikes Back. In this episode, we're going to cover books 4, 5, and 6 as part 2 of the Yoda series. In our last episode, we discussed books 1 through 3, and we saw a distant memory during the High Republic timeline. And in that story, Yoda was reminded about patience, and we saw how that connects to Luke's visitation coming up shortly. So let's dive into the new story arc, Students of the Force, starting off in book 4. All right, Students of the Force. So we have Yoda here sitting in a swamp again in his late 1890s, and we'll see that this is happening somewhere around 1 ABY, 2 ABY. So Yoda is about 897, 898 years old, right before The Empire Strikes Back. Once again, we see Yoda in his little mud hut, and we see this person trying to talk to him through the Force, saying, Yoda. Yoda is just trying to ignore him, and this person, whoever it is, we all think it's Kenobi, of course, saying, Master Yoda, we must really talk. And he's like, Yoda, you wish to see me, Master Yoda? And we dive into a flashback. Here we see a young Dooku. The time here in this flashback is early to mid-40s, so somewhere 42, 43 BBY. And you'll see here that Yoda is in his early 850s, and we have Count Dooku is late 50s, maybe even 60 years old in this. This is happening about 10 years before the movie A Phantom Menace. Master Dooku, good to see you it is. And you, Master Yoda. Dooku is asking why he was summoned here. Yoda says, I have a request of you. Whatever my old master wishes of me. Walk with me. So they're exiting the Jedi Council, and Dooku reflects back to when he was a Padawan and says, this feels like I'm about to be scolded for something. And Yoda jokes, memories of your youth, perhaps. They continue down a hallway, and Yoda speaks about many years has it been since you provided instruction at the temple. Join me now, I ask of you. So Yoda is asking Dooku to come help and train some Padawans. Dooku says this is a rather unexpected request. Yoda says, good for the initiates your presence would be. So Yoda is trying to convince Dooku to help train the Padawans. Dooku points out that most of his time is taken up with Jedi Council duties, traveling on behalf of the Council or dealing with politicians in the Senate. And Yoda recognizes that he does have a way with all of that. But he does point out that we are guided by the Force, not the whims of politicians. And I think it's rather funny that 10 short years later, when we see them in The Phantom Menace, that they are nothing but driven by politicians. And maybe that's part of Palpatine's big plan. We are outside in a courtyard with this beautiful tree here, and Yoda's kind of praising Dooku, saying that you were probably one of the best Padawans of your generation, and Dooku, of course, recognizes that he's being flattering. And Dooku points out that he recalls getting in more trouble than any other Padawan of his generation, and Yoda does agree with that, and that does provide Dooku a valuable perspective here. We see a little bit of a flashback here of Dooku being as a Padawan and as a young Jedi Knight, and with Yoda kind of speaking over it. Benefit the students at the academy, yes, but also Dooku. Too often his thoughts stray from the present to the past. Sereno and the family he left behind, into the future, what might happen, what could happen. If concerned with the future of the Jedi he is, then help shape it he shall. Let's just jump back here on this page. So we're seeing Dooku as a young Padawan, as a youngling, as a Jedi Knight, and then we see an older one, and I don't know if you've picked up on here, but we do see this glowing figure behind him with glowing red eyes. I believe, of course, that's Palpatine, or the Sith Lord, Darth Sidious. Yoda mentions to the past of Sereno. Dooku was born on the planet Sereno in the Outer Rim. He was born to the ruler of that planet who despised Jedi. So when his father realized he was Force sensitive, his father just left him for dead in the forest. But thankfully the Jedi found him. Dooku would find out years later who his father was, and that was about 40, 50 years before this story's taking place. So Dooku has been going through a lot, and I wasn't aware of Dooku's past with his family of just being abandoned. Kind of explains a little bit, huh? Back to the story. So we see many younglings being trained here, but there's 3 up front. What looks like a green person, somebody with orange fur, and that's a Wookiee, obviously. And Dooku points out a Trandoshan initiate, and fighting alongside a Wookiee for no less, raised away from the anger and prejudices of their people they were, and a formidable group they have become. Dooku was surprised by this, and there appears to be tension between these two races. Nothing that we've seen yet in the movies or TV shows, but it is covered in various Legends books and other comic books. Yoda furthers the lore of the animosity between the two species. Then they lift up their helmets, and we see that this third race is Tiger, or Togorian, if I'm saying that correctly, Togorian. There's very little known about this species in canon, but there is a lot about Togorians in Legends. So Yoda interrupts their training and says, "We have a guest today. Say hello to Master Dooku." And of course, they're all polite and respond, "Hello, Master Dooku." Master Dooku was on the Jedi Council, and he was once a Padawan to Master Yoda himself. Oh, wow. I'm not going to speak the Wookiee stuff anymore. I'll spare you all that. But I'm guessing he said something to the effect of, "You read too much." So here we have 3 young initiates very enamored by these 2 masters. And we learn that the Wookiee's name is Krisish. Yoda continues, "If your initiates are currently learning the art of the lightsaber, perhaps a demonstration is in order." "A fine idea, Master Dooku." "So this is going to be so wizard," says the Tiger. And the Wookiee says something, and the Trandoshan says, "Come on, let's go get a better view." So now there's an audience of younglings about to watch a sparring match between Yoda and Dooku. We then see lightsabers burr on, and then Yoda's jumping over Dooku, lightsabers flashing. This reminds me a lot of when Yoda fights Dooku in the Clone Wars.
It is obvious that this contest cannot be decided by our knowledge of the Force, but by our skills with a lightsaber.
Then we see the 3 initiates walking down a hall, just talking about that sparring fight that they just saw. The Trandoshan and the Togorian are kind of acting it out. And we see the Wookiee kind of trailing behind, his head's down. And the Togorian says, "Wasn't that amazing? Have you ever seen dueling like that?" says the Trandoshan. And the Wookiee says something about being better than both of the Jedi Masters at some point. His friends jump in saying, "Sure, you'll be better than both of the Jedi Masters. You only need 800 years to catch up." "Is Master Dooku really that old?" the other one asks. And no, Master Yoda is. Back out in the courtyard, we see Dooku and Yoda kind of cleaning up the mess of all their helmets and practicing sabers. Yoda comments to Dooku, "Strong in the Force you remain, my old apprentice. As do you, my former master." "The initiates, what are your impressions?" Yoda asks. "Still quite young, of course, but a promising lot. The Wookiee in particular has impressive form already, from what I saw." "Yes, young Krisish is very dedicated. He is driven, perhaps too much so. But good friends he has. Remind me of you and Sifo Dyas, they do." And we see a little flashback of Dooku thinking about his friend Sifo Dyas. Well, yes, that was a long time ago. "Do you by chance know how Sifo Dyas is doing?" "Traveling with his old master. Much time he spends lost in visions of the future. A difficult path he has been given," Yoda says. Yoda and Dooku reminisce about Dooku training alongside Sifo Dyas. We know Sifo Dyas as the Jedi that ordered the clone army.
"Units are ready, with 1,000,000 more well on the way."
That's good news.
"Please tell your master, Sifo Dyas, that his order will be met on time."
I'm sorry, Master...
Jedi Master Sifo Dyas is still a leading member of the Jedi Council, is he not?
Master Sifo Dyas was killed almost 10 years ago.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. but I'm sure he would have been proud of the army we've built for him.
Sifo Dyas died about 10 years before the Attack of the Clones movie, during the time of the Phantom Menace movie, and at this time in the flashback, Sifo Dyas will die in about 10 years. Yoda and Dooku continue to have a great conversation, kind of challenging one another, right? Perhaps the Council should reassess, determine what the Force seeks to tell us through Sifo Dyas. Possibilities the Force shows us, not certainties. Rushing out to action out of fear leads a Jedi astray. And yet, Jedi are meant to serve as light in the galaxy. Wouldn't we be most effective if we knew where that light was needed most? So Dooku seems to have good reasoning behind kind of supporting the idea of visions and wanting to listen to what the Force is, because how else, what if the Force is telling you to go do something or react to something or warn you that something's coming up? And Yoda thinks about that a little bit, and then they kind of walk in their separate ways. We're back and we see Krishish, the Wookiee, trying to meditate, and we see two voices off screen, his two friends, talking about the sparring event again. This disturbs him. The Wookiee kind of snaps back at him a little bit, looks really frustrated, and they apologize. Sorry, we can talk elsewhere. And they continue to walk away talking about the sparring match, and the Wookiee is just having a hard time trying to meditate here. Whoa. On the next screen, we start seeing visions that the Wookiee is having. So we see two Trandoshans pinning down a Wookiee. We're seeing Yoda around a platoon of Wookiees talking about stuff. We see a Trandoshan and a Wookiee fighting, and we see Trandoshans and Wookiees blasting at each other in kind of a military formation here. Finally, we see his friend, the Trandoshan, with a lightsaber kind of swinging down at him. And he's just having a hard time struggling with all of this. And now we're in the Jedi archives, and Dooku's there, and he hears Krishish struggling with something, trying to find something. So he goes over and says, "Initiate Krishish. What is it? Is something wrong?" So Dooku is genuinely interested in looking out for him. Krishish is apologizing for disturbing Master Dooku. Dooku assures him, "You did not disturb me, but I should point out you have not answered my question. What's troubling you?" And the Wookiee shares that he has had a vision. And Dooku says, "A vision? Have you had them before?" And he says, "No." And he says, "Good, it's your first. That is good." The Jedi often don't look kindly on such visions, even less on those who choose to act on them. Dooku continues on the next page. "Many would tell you that you are likely to be led astray by focusing on potential events. Whatever it is the Force has shown you, I would suggest you tell no one for now, not even Master Yoda." And this is happening as the initiates are walking into a training room, and we see Krishish bump his Trandoshan friend hard enough that she responded, "Hey." And Yoda does see this and pick up on that. And that ends Book 4. Let's jump into Book 5. Book 5 kicks off at Alaris Prime many years ago. We see Yoda walking out of a small ship in front of a ton of Wookiees, and they're asking something, and they're walking down, and they end up at a battlefield. This battlefield has Wookiee bodies spread all over the place and Trandoshan bodies all over the place. And Yoda simply asks, "What happened here?" There was a battle, a big battle. This battle happened probably about 12 years prior to the flashback, so in the mid-50s BBY. So this is a flashback and a flashback. Alaris Prime is in the same system as Kashyyyk, the Wookiee homeworld. There are some references in Star Wars legends to battles and skirmishes on Alaris Prime, including Wookiees and Trandoshans, but nothing seems to line up on the timeline that we have here. So this is just another battle between these two species. We see the Wookiee speaking to Yoda, Yoda saying, "Larger your hunting party was, stronger. A poor target, yes. A matter of unfortunate timing. The encounter likely." And then all of a sudden Yoda says, "I can sense." And we see a large Wookiee coming over carrying a baby Trandoshan. And Yoda points out, "A survivor. And gifted." Yoda talks, kind of coos with the baby, and the baby responds back. And he notices that the baby Trandoshan can move leaves using the Force. "No need for tears, little one. Safe you are. Strong in the Force she is, and still young enough to be taught. Take her to the temple, I will." Notice Yoda making that comment about she is young enough to be taught. And of course we can think back to when young Anakin was in that Jedi Council.
He is to be trained then? No, he will not be trained.
He is the chosen one. You must see it.
Clouded this boy's future is.
Coruscant, 12 years later. So now we're back to the first flashback we were at with the Trandoshan and the Togorian sparring and practicing. The Trandoshan saying, "You'll never best me in combat, Jackson. We'll see which one of us the Force is with today, Geyer." And they continue to spar. And then towards the end of the page, we see, "Fine, I guess it's with you," as the Tiger says to the Trandoshan, because the lightsaber was inches away from his face. We have names for our two new characters here. The Trandoshan's name is Geyer, and the Tiger's name is Jackson. And actually, Jackson is not a new character in Star Wars canon. We'll see more of him. We'll talk about more of him as we wrap up today's video. On the next page, we see that they're continuing to spar. We have Geyer saying, "Maybe the Force will be with you next time. Maybe." And we hear Yoda's thoughts here. "Come far she has in the many years since she came to the temple. A fine Jedi Knight she will make someday." And again, we see the Wookiee Krishish being a little passive-aggressive towards Geyer, saying she enjoys hurting people. And she responds, "Huh? I don't enjoy hurting people." That was uncalled for, Krishish. And Yoda's just kind of noticing the tension amongst their friends here. "Krishish, please remain here. Speak to you I must." So as all the initiates are leaving, Yoda calls and asks for the Wookiee to stay. As they're walking out, Jackson comments to Geyer, "Serves him right. I don't know why he became such a jerk, but it's about time he got in trouble for it." And Geyer looks a little saddened by that comment and says, "You shouldn't wish bad things on people. It's not what a Jedi does. Besides, I don't want him to get in trouble. I just want him to be my friend again." And I love these few little panels here of just kind of showing the morality of Jedi, and that they should not be wishing bad things on people, especially on their friends like that. For light and life. We're back in the room with Yoda and Krishish. Yoda commenting, "Much progress you have made, Krishish." Krishish standing off, his head down, his shoulders kind of swooped over, not looking very happy. Yoda, Master of the Obvious, says, "Something troubles you? I sense anger, fear. Hand in hand, those two often come." And Krishish asks something. Another student? Perhaps. But afraid you are now, if not before. Something to do with your friend Geyer?" You can just see the utter despair in the poor Wookiee's face. We see another vision of Wookiees and Trandoshans fighting. And his friend Geyer swinging a saber right at him. At this perspective, these are his eyes seeing his friend swinging a sword down at him. That is a terrible vision. "Required to be friends with all Jedi you are not, but respect them and their connection to the Force you should. Allowing fear, anger, even hate to cloud your interactions with others, that is the path to the dark side." And of course, we remember this scene from The Phantom Menace.
"Your thoughts dwell on your mother."
"I miss her."
Afraid to lose her, I think.
What has that got to do with anything?
Everything. Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
Yoda and Krishish continue talking. Krishish recognizes that there has been a conflict between Wookiees and Trandoshans, and Yoda points out that whatever conflict there is in the galaxy, in this temple, it has no place. Found as a youngling, Geyer was, by a group of Wookiees. They are the reason your Trandoshan friend is here. Through all of us, the Force works, often in unexpected ways. Yoda continues with his thoughts. "Choose the path for our students we cannot. Provide them with guidance? Yes. Knowledge and wisdom, as much as we ourselves possess such things. But what they do with it, their choice it must be. They must take those steps on their own. Otherwise, mere children they will always be." And during this little voiceover, we see the Tiger and the Trandoshan in a cafe area type deal. They're sitting down enjoying some food. We see the Wookiee coming in, walking over. The Togorian is kind of surprised by that, Jackson. And they make amends, and we end this page with Krishish and Geyer hugging it all out. All seems fine. And then immediately on the next page, we have another vision. We see Geyer pushing Krishish, and again, her saber up, about to strike down on him, and he wakes up from it. Must have been a terrible nightmare. We see Yoda out in the courtyard in front of that Zen-like tree, and he knows the Wookiee's coming and says, "Young Krishish, more questions have you?" And Krishish is looking for Dooku. Master Dooku is departing Coruscant today, but still here for a short time. May he have the answers you seek, young one. Yoda's feeling compassion for the Wookiee and hopes he gets some answers. And if Yoda can't help him, he's hoping Dooku can. We find Dooku out in front of a Radiant 7 ship. This is potentially the same ship that delivers Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi to Naboo at the start of The Phantom Menace. We see Dooku and Krishish talking, the same vision again. Very curious indeed. Very few things in the galaxy are certain, but it would seem that the Force is trying to warn you of something. He asks a question. The Master Yoda isn't one to take action on the basis of a vague vision, especially if one is accusing a student years before they might fall to the dark side. He's probably asking, what should I do with this? Have patience, my young friend. A warning so far in advance is a gift for a Jedi. So Dooku continues to give bad advice to Krishish. We see on the next slide the three of them sparring and practicing and meditating, and Krishish with his eyes open, kind of keeping an eye on Geyer. And we even see as they're kind of creating their lightsabers, he's paying attention to what she's doing and what she's building there. Throughout these scenes, Dooku's thoughts continue. You have been given the time you need to watch, to gather evidence, and to develop the skills you will need if you must act. Perhaps your visions will continue, grant you more clarity on the matter. Either way, you have been warned, and if the time comes to act, you will be ready. So Dooku is kind of planting this idea that your visions are true, they're going to come true, and you better be ready. This is the Force warning you. So be ready, be on the lookout. And of course, now Krishish is on high alert, keeping an eye on his friend. All of a sudden, we're at Corvair 2. And Corvair 2 is in the Inner Rim. This is the first time we see the planet Corvair 2 in Star Wars. It's in the Kudo system. Yoda says, this is going to be an important trial. The wilderness holds many dangers. Depend on the Force and your friends you must. And a human initiate questions, Master Yoda, you haven't said how long we're going to be here for. Yoda responds, well, until you have finished, of course. Somewhere else to be, have you? We see another human initiate, a Duras and a Rodian, kind of snickering at him. Having good fun there. We see the initiates bringing supplies out and setting them up, using the Force to move things. We see Yoda thinking, good for the initiates this will be. Surrounded by life, surrounded by the Force. Too easy to forget on Coruscant it is. Always so busy, day after day after day. And Yoda's kind of walking off to a secluded space. He continues, even a Jedi Master needs to stop. Listen, reconnect we must from time to time, for our own sake and for our students. So he's on this kind of a taller rock pile here in a meditative state, and he has these flying creatures around him. Seems to be a very peaceful, tranquil state. Next screen, we see that same human initiate saying, where did Master Yoda go? And the Duras responding, probably off to do some important Jedi Master things. Well, he couldn't have gone far, right? The shuttle's still here. In the Duras comments, I've heard the greatest Jedi Masters don't need a ship to travel through space. And they comment, who's greater than Master Yoda? And the human's like, well, he wouldn't just leave us here, would he? I thought this was an interesting one, that the Jedi Masters don't need a ship to travel through space. I checked this out, and there are some examples of this in Legends. There is a Force power called Fold Space, which allows the Force user to bend space to instantly transport an object between places. Also, remember Luke in The Last Jedi was able to appear to his sister using a Force projection. He was able to see and interact with folks, and they had no idea he wasn't there.
Luke.
See you around, kid.
Though not actual transportation, it certainly comes off as being able to travel through space without a spaceship. This was a fun little womp rat hole to chase. Okay, back to Yoda. Relax, I'm sure he's still on the planet, but remember, the whole point of this exercise is to see how we do on our own, without a Jedi Master watching every little thing we do. We see Krishish walking up behind his two friends, and again, a vision of that Trandoshan, with a lightsaber swinging down on him. Hey Krishish, everything okay? The Wookiee responds, talk alone? Sure. Krishish has asked Geyer to talk alone, so they walk away from Jackson, their tiger friend. Is something wrong? You seem agitated. Krishish shares that he's had a vision. He said, and Geyer, his friend, says, a vision? I didn't know you had those. What was it about? And he continues to explain that there is some sort of danger in this vision. And she says, what kind of danger? And then, whoa! Krishish whacks his friend and throws her up against a tree. He charges after her, throws another punch, and she jumps out of the way. What do you mean, me? What are you doing? He goes to make another strike, but she stops him with her hand and yells, I'm not a threat, and flips him onto his back. Krishish gets up, grabs his lightsaber, flicks it on, and charges after her. And wow, that ends Book 5. Let's get on to Book 6. Book 6 kicks off with Yoda still in that tranquil state, thinking, always speaking to us, the Force is. But do we choose to listen? So caught up in what was, what will be, we fail to notice what is here and what is now. We see the angry Wookiee's face behind him saying, and he kind of catches on like, oh, there's something going on here. So we're back to the battle between the Wookiee and the Trandoshan. We see the Wookiee yelling something. He's standing over his Trandoshan friend with his blue lightsaber out. And she says, why are you acting like this, Krishish? I haven't hurt anyone, and I'm not going to. And he lifts his saber to strike her dead. And out of nowhere, Jackson jumps out and yells, leave her alone, and pushes the Wookiee down to the ground. Geyer asks, Jackson? Geyer, are you? And Krishish hits him with his lightsaber, causing him intense pain, and then punches him in the face. We see blood come pouring out, and Jackson's laying on the ground. Geyer mentions, you're talking like I'm some kind of monster, but I'm not the one hurting people. I'm not the one attacking their friends. And she pulls out her lightsaber. The only monster I see here is you. And we see an intense picture here of Geyer with her green lightsaber. We see Krishish charging at her, yelling, lightsaber in hand. The two lightsabers clash. She hisses at him. They continue to fight, almost like sparring. We see that vision finally come true of her holding that saber up over her head and her yelling, stop this. We see him swing at her. I was never a threat. And as he swings, a poor tree takes a hit. No matter what visions you had, and we see him flipping over the fallen tree. Maybe the Force does guide you, but it guides me too, she says. And we see them just continue to fight, sabers flying around everywhere. We see him pushing down on her, and she using all of her strength to hold that saber back. And then she uses the Force and to push him across the field into the tree, his lightsaber flying out of hand. She comes charging at him, hissing, lifts her saber out. He yells, and she strikes down and destroys his saber and does not hurt her friend. She says, I don't know what you think is going on here, but if we could just talk about it. And he jumps up from the tree and lands on top of her. She loses her lightsaber, and he puts his two big furry hands around her throat and squeezes. She says, no. Having another disagreement, are we? Master! And we see Yoda walking on the scene here. Master Yoda, take care of this, I will, he says to Jackson. Return to camp. Yes, Master Yoda. And Yoda's face kind of has a face of a parent who's tired of dealing with troubling kids. That's kind of funny. Tell me, what has happened here? And the Wookiee yells something, and she says, it's not true. Sense the dark side in her, did you? Do you sense it in me too? And the Christian says something, he says no, and Yoda says no, he says. But always present the dark side is. Not separate from the Force, but a part of it. That is the danger faced by all Jedi. Never silences that call. Never defeated is that temptation. What temptation has young Geyer succumbed to? And he says something. He's ashamed and his head's down. He says, a vision? What I liked on this page was Yoda kind of reminds us that the dark side is there. It's never separate from the Force, right? So Jedi are always struggling against the dark side. We've seen some great Jedis fall to that, like Anakin. I think the best scene we have seen of that is with Rey.
A Force.
And inside you.
Inside me. That same Force. There's something else. Beneath the island. A place. A dark place.
Balance. Powerful light, powerful darkness.
It's cold. It's calling me.
Resist it, Rey. Rey!
So the Wookiee finally tells him about the vision, and she says, I'm not going to turn. I'm going to be a Jedi. And note, he's still on top of her. He says, seen her turn you have, and when will this happen? And Yoda starts picking up some rocks with the Force and spinning them around. And he says, you don't know? And yet you act like you did. Tried to strike her down. She's your friend. Was it to serve the Force, to protect others? Or did anger drive you? Fear, perhaps? Tools of the dark side those are. And the Wookiee looks kind of shocked at this point. The Trandoshan hisses and shoves him off of her. And Yoda asks, unharmed are you? I think so. And she asks, what do we want to do with him? Take him back to the temple. Much to learn he still has. And now we're back at Coruscant. No, more like this. And we see Dooku training the younglings. You must be prepared to move in any direction. He's holding a saber over the children. Like this, Master Dooku? Much better. And it appears that our regular instructor has returned at last. Yoda enters the room. Yoda says, continue, please. And then they're seen a little bit later walking down a hall, and we hear Dooku say, I hear there was a bit of excitement during your stay on Corvair. Yoda is not finding humor in this. He says, make a light of this, you should not. Years ago I spoke with Krishish, resolved the matter seemed to be. It seems I too underestimated the strength of his visions and their influence on him, Dooku said. Yoda, surprised by this, Krishish told you his visions? Yes, he came to me in confidence. I gave him guidance that seemed most appropriate at the time, which obviously we know was terrible guidance because Dooku is not a good person. Come to me with this you should have. Perhaps, but I don't know how much of a difference that would have made, Master Yoda. I've seen the Jedi Council treat those with visions of possible futures as dangerous, and I'd hoped for a kinder path for him than Sifo Dyas had faced. So again, we're hearing about Sifo Dyas and him being kind of excommunicated from the Jedi Council for being so focused and listening to his visions that he was having. And yet, dangerous he was, misled by the dark side. Perhaps you're right, but if there was indeed any truth to what he saw, Dooku says, it could be that in warning his friend of the potential dark future, he saved her from a terrible fate. Not that it excuses his actions on Corvair, of course. Yoda and Dooku continue, assuming we understand what the Force is saying without listening first, to dangerous places such thinking leads. There are aspects of the Force that we may not see eye to eye on, Dooku says, but despite that, I have always believed that you trust my judgment with the initiates. And Yoda says, yes, I do. Knowingly endanger a student you would not. And Dooku says, it was frightening encounter for all involved, I'm sure. But it seems that no lasting harm was done. And we hear Yoda thinking, wrong Dooku was about many things. And we're back in the courtyard, and Yoda is meditating in front of that tree. Master Yoda? Young Geyer, is something troubling you? And she kind of holds herself close because she's got to kind of face an awkward conversation here. And Master Dooku said, I should talk to you. I asked him if I could go with him on his next diplomatic trip off-world. And Yoda says, you wish to leave the temple. What about your training? No responsibility do you bear for the events with Krishish. I know that, but Master Yoda, can you really tell me that the vision he saw will never come true? Yoda pauses and says, no. I think Yoda should have lied. You taught us that being a Jedi means making choices that protect others. Even if Krishish's vision is wrong, this is how I can protect him and give him a chance. It's how I can keep either of us from going down the wrong path, keep anyone from getting hurt. If you choose to abandon your training now, Yoda says, a Jedi he will never become. I know, Master Yoda, I know. And several years later, Yoda would be in a very similar conversation with another young Padawan.
Back into the Order. You, Maker.
I'm sorry, Master, but I'm not coming back.
We continue here with Yoda's thoughts. Visions of the future, far too often they infect our present. Underestimate their power over my students, I did. The fear they could inspire. I warned them of the arrogance of having certainty about the future. But did I not fall into the same trap? Believing that because the Force guided me to bring young Gaia, bring her to the temple, I knew what she was to become. So certain I was in her future as a Jedi, a different path I had not foreseen, and so I failed her. As he's thinking here, we're seeing a boarding party getting onto a ship, and so I failed her. And as Yoda's thinking here, we're seeing the boarding party going on the ship. The Trandoshan is dressed up in a casual outfit, actually a pretty good-looking outfit. She's no longer in her Jedi Padawan robes. And it's just her friend saying goodbye as she boards the ship with Dooku. And then that flashback is over and we're back in the swamp. And he continues to think, she was not the first student I failed, nor the last, but never again. Yoda, so that Force voice is talking to him again. You cannot ignore me forever. We both know it. To be continued. And this story arc ends with another very valuable lesson about seeing the future and thinking about the visions and not letting the visions lead you astray. We see this come to play in The Empire Strikes Back as Yoda is training Luke.
Through the Force, things you will see, other places, the future, the past, old friends long gone.
Han? Leia! Will they die?
Difficult to see. Always in motion is the future.
These three books were fantastic. The second story arc in Star Wars Yoda continues strong. It's great seeing some cool species more prominent in the Star Wars stories, like a Trandoshan and a Togorian. We got to learn some new things like about the Trandoshan and Wookiee conflicts that we haven't really seen in Star Wars yet. And we also got to hear about a very old familiar name, Sifo Dyas. So what did you think? Please leave a comment below and don't forget to subscribe to watch the next video. May the Force be with you.